Hey, if this goes well, this will be my podcast this week. Just saying. Okay, so there's something I want you to do. Not because we're all so important. I want you to say Shechianu. Everyone knows what Shechianu is, right? Like when you get new clothes or it's a holiday that you haven't had in a while. It's like, thank you, God, for bringing me to this moment. So this is a sign of the past. This cost me 600 shekels. All right. This is what's called Shemen Afarsamon. This is a special oil that was used in the temple. All right. It was part of the incense mix that we used in the temple. It was probably the oil that the prophets and kings were anointed with. This is a really big deal. And it was extinct. We thought it was extinct. I wrote a 40-page paper on this, except that there's a guy who lives in the Jordan Valley who keeps telling me that he's not religious, but he just happens to be growing like a whole. You have to, next time you go to Israel, you should go there. He has like the largest collection of biblical plants probably in the world, frankincense, myrrh, all that good stuff that you've heard about, including this. So it turns out, and even some of the biggest rabbis have said that this is the Afarsamon oil, that it's been brought back. They thought it was extinct. They managed to bring it back. It has its own blessing. Okay, in Masechet Brachot in the Talmud, there's a whole discussion about what blessing you should make on this, and they decide on Boreh Shemen Arev, which there's nothing in the world that has this blessing. So I just figured, since you were the gutsy guy who came in here first, that first of all, you could smell it. Okay, you can make a Shechianu because I assume you never smelled it before. Because every day you should try and find something about that day that made it special, not necessarily a blessing, like even if it's not an official blessing, okay? Because a lot of times, like when I talk to Hashem, it's not through official prayers. It's just because we have a conversation in my own words, and I think he gets it. So prayer is magnificent, but if you're not into prayer, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be having the conversation, okay? There are different languages that we can speak, literally. So, Boreh Shemen Arev. Okay, girls, I'm warning you. Something may happen here. Hang on a sec. Okay. And Shechianu. Boreh Shemen Arev. Pretty powerful stuff, right? So there's all these stories in our sources about this. Also the Roman and Greeks, because there were medicinal benefits to this. The one that I love, I don't know if I should tell this to a group of teenagers, is them talking to the girls of Israel who would put this in a chicken gizzard. They didn't have like gel caps at the time. So I guess that was like a little thing that they would put things in and put it in their shoe. And when a cute guy walked by, they would smash it and it would smell. It's a powerful smell, right? And you have the sages saying, Bnot Yisrael, girls of Israel, what kind of behavior is this? And I love that because girls are girls and boys are boys and sages are sages and thousands of years have passed and it's still the same kind of behavior. So why did I bring this though? Because we talk about coming back to Israel physically and we talk about coming to Israel in terms of being able to protect the country. Super important to protect the country. If you're not alive, everything else is kind of irrelevant. Okay, so obviously that's a really big deal. And that's why my kids went and served in the army and still serve in the army, even though they're married and with children, they serve in the reserves because somebody has to do it and you can't fob it off on other people. I mean, you can try, but it's not the right thing to do. But in addition to that, we're bringing back other things in the land. So there are things that we thought were extinct and it turns out that they're coming back. This is one of them. Certain kind of dates or other things. And it's just like, that's why I call my podcast Rejuvenation, because it's not like we're something new that just came up, but we're bringing back a lot of the things. So, So I wanted to ask you, you have a question for me? That's why you come out to us first. Huh? I should ask you? Okay. What does Israel mean for you? That's like not a bad question, right? It's not too general.
I'm not sure if I can give you the full answer right now. I think I have to really think about it deeply.
Okay.
But Israel, to me, I think it's just a place where I become complete. And that's how I see it. I've never feel the same in any other place when I'm in. It's like compared to Israel,
amazing.
It's completely different for me. And in the trip with JLA, we were there for a month, and I really was able to experience that. And it really, like this thing of being in Israel for an entire month, really changed my perspective on it. And I think I really might want to do Aliyah when I grow up.
Wow. Okay, that we did not plan this. This was not set up, right? I didn't send an email beforehand. So it's funny because the first time that I went to Israel, I was 8. And it wasn't such a happy household. And it was like a mishmash of different Jewish things. But I felt like at home. I don't know what it was. It was like a portal to something else. It was like a depth that like I didn't expect, right? Like it totally changed me. I was 8 years old. I said, one day I'm making Aliyah. Oh, you guys have all been 8, right? You didn't skip from 7 to 9. When you're 8, you're 8. You're like in 2nd or 3rd grade. Nobody takes you seriously. You don't take yourself seriously. You don't even know what that means. That trip totally changed. I vowed that one day I'm moving to Israel. And it took 19 years, got married, went to school, had kids, whatever. But don't minimize what you're feeling, because if that becomes your goal, then it actually can happen. But on the other hand, I'll say to you, don't overthink it, because that's what sometimes happens. People say, but I don't know what career, and I'm not sure if I want to go into the army, and my family's not so crazy about it, or my grandmother's old and I don't want to leave her. There's always going to be 1,000,001 reasons to not make Aliyah. But if you're set on that and you say, like, the person that I need to be can only be fulfilled in that environment, right? Like a fish can only really swim in the water, and your soul or your mind or whatever it is that makes you, all of it, can only really get to its potential in Israel. Then make sure it happens, okay? Because there will be people and a lot of obstacles going in your way, for sure. But just say, this is where I need to be. This is my destiny. Use whatever highfalutin word you want. But that's incredible. Was there anything in particular that happened, or was just like the whole thing together?
I think in general it was the entire experience. But usually when you travel with your family, you're traveling more on the touristy side. I have family in Israel, so I did see more of like the day-to-day basis, but I never saw like all the inspiring things that Israel has to offer. Yes, of course, I went to the Kotel every single time, but like we never had a trip dedicated to seeing, Marat Machpelah, things like this.
Wow.
So
right. Look, one of the places where I spend a lot of time, and most tour guides and most tours don't go, is Yudav Shomron. All right, that's another thing that happens. Like people are like, oh, it's dangerous, so I don't want to go. So once again, is that for us? Is that like, no, ignore that? Okay. So once again, we are letting the bad guys dictate what we do, right? And they're not allowing us to connect. And I have a pet peeve, is that, and I'm so glad your school is different, that a lot of the student groups and organizations don't go into Yudav Shomron. They say it's insurance. They say it's not safe. Great. So if you haven't gone to Shiloh, did you guys go to Shiloh? Did you go to where the Mishkan was? No? Next time? Oh my God. So Shiloh predates Yerushalayim. It's our first capital. It's where the Mishkan is set up when we first come into the land. It's an unbelievable place. And there's also a power there. Like I broke my ankle there. It was a bad power. Okay, but Eli, the Kohen, broke his neck. So somebody said to me, okay, at least you're better off. You're just in a wheelchair. All right, but any power, any energy can be used for good or for bad. I mean, we discussed that already. And Shiloh is where you just feel like the beginnings of us as a people and the land. Because the Judaism that we practice today is very different from what they had there. Theirs was like raw and in touch with nature. And that's why they had prophecy, which we don't have anymore. It was like on a really, really different level, to a way that we almost can't understand anymore, but you can get little glimpses of it. And that's amazing that you did that, really, that you were able to do that, because this is the heart of us, is these places, is these hills. I mean, if you look in the Tanakh, with all due respect to Rishon LeZion and Tel Aviv, they're not mentioned, okay? The people and the places and the scenes of our history are in those hills. So like I get up in the morning, I live in Efrat, which is just outside of Beit Lechem. So Shavuot happens to be my favorite holiday. Like in Israel, it's one day. You have to eat cheesecake, okay? You have to buy flowers. And you read a book about two amazing women, okay? The only story, by the way, interestingly enough, that's a mother-daughter-in-law scene. Think about the Tanakh for a second. That's the only mother-daughter-in-law relationship that shows up. It's like even Hashem couldn't deal with that, okay? So he just kind of, like Rivka only shows up after Sarah's gone, and it's very funny. Like the Torah has a sense of humor if you know how to read between the lines. It really does. On sometimes what it doesn't say. So I look into Beit Lechem, which means, what does Beit Lechem mean? Really simple Hebrew. What does Lechem mean? House of bread. Like
lechem.
house of bread, lechem. Although you should know that in Arabic, lechem is meat. So apparently, lechem doesn't mean always bread. It means your basic food. So when you're an agricultural people, which we are, the basic food is some kind of bread. When you're nomads and you're shepherds and you're not connected to the land because you're out there and your religion is a lunar religion, okay, then your basic food is going to be meat. So it's a little, like, it's important to understand that. So Beilechem is like house of bread. You read Megillat Ruth. The whole thing happens in the barley and the wheat fields. It happens during the Omer, right? And it's a book about chesed. It's a book about, time period-wise, it fits in the book of Shoftim. You guys learn Judges, the book of Judges? Fascinating. Very, very, very difficult book to read, okay? The book of Ruth should be in Shoftim. That's the time period. They say that Boaz was one of the judges. So why does it stand alone? Because it's showing us what should have been and wasn't. Shoftim is like all the potential, and they completely mess up to the point of a civil war. And Ruth is, wow. This is when it works. This is when you think about other people. This is when you think about the stranger and the convert and the kindness to others. And so we always have these choices. We're right now at one of those places in Israel where we can go this way or go that way. When they write the book about now, what are they going to write? That's up to us. All right? When the historians look back, they're looking back on the things that we are doing or not yet doing. So for me, it's like I just get up and I'm like, wow. So I don't have to be told. I don't have to look at the calendar to know Shavuot is coming because I see the wild wheat is growing in the fields. Okay, I see that it has stopped raining because when you celebrate a Jewish calendar here in Miami, you're actually celebrating the cycle of nature in the land of Israel. Okay, Pesach has to be in the spring. We have 2 Adars this year, right? Because in the ancient world, the sages would have walked around this time of year and said, okay, we ready for spring? What's happening? Has it stopped raining? Are the sheep fat and ready to be sheared? Is the wheat and barley growing in the fields? And if the answer is we're not ready yet, they threw in another month. That's why the extra month is always now. Push Nisan, push Pesach into the spring because it's the holiday of new beginnings. It has to be in the spring. Ramadan is starting next week. This year it corresponds to Adar Bet. But sometimes it's in the summer and sometimes it's in November because it's a lunar calendar that's not connected to the land. But every single one of our holidays is connected to Eretz Yisrael. When you are celebrating a holiday here, you're actually celebrating Eretz Yisrael, whether you know it or not. So on Sukkot, you're sitting under Schlaf and you're holding a lulav, and I take people down to the Jordan Valley and we pick dates off the palm trees. And that's exactly what's happening. All right? Tu B'Av, which is a real Valentine's Day, not like the Hallmark version that they have here. It's the real holiday of love. That's the grape harvest because everybody's like a little drunk and like slipping around while you're squishing the grapes. Like, oh, I'm sorry I bumped into you. Ha, you're really cute, by the way. All right, and that's us. Like we're really a lusty, earthy people. Like seriously. So anyway, I'm so happy for you that you felt something more than just the superficial touristy thing. Everyone runs to Masada, and I'm like, oh, come on. There's so much more to get in there. And it's a beautiful thing that the school takes you there. You guys are very, very fortunate to have that because not very many people do. And to really open your eyes to choices that you can make and to feeling like there's something bigger going on. I'm not so sure that there aren't Jews. If you could talk to a Jew in any of our history, that wouldn't change places with us now. With everything happening, all right? When I think back on Jews having to hide, Jews not being able to do what we needed to do, or just being lost because it was just too difficult. And then here we are now, proud, strong, very strong, okay? Strong physically, but strong physically isn't enough. You have to be strong in the direction that you're taking your strength, your physical strength. It's not enough just to be strong. We have to be strong in our faith. We have to be strong in our peoplehood. And that's where you guys fit in because you're it. I mean, you're the next generation. Like, once I go, it's like I'm passing the baton to you. So where are you with that? Can I do that? You going to drop it? Or are you going to understand how important your role is here? It really is. Because we're small people, every single one of us punches way above our weight.
Hi, how you doing?
Hey, good. How'd you get the name Gustavo? I know your parents gave it to you, but like you named after somebody or something?
Maybe, I don't know.
You don't know?
I'm not sure. No.
Oh, okay. You might want to ask.
Um,
Just out of curiosity. Yeah. Okay.
well, the main question was like, do you believe in like inherent evil and good? Because you were talking a lot about it like up front.
Inherent, no. I believe in people making choices. I think every person is, do certain people have a chemical dispensation maybe to being a sociopath? Yes. All right. And we see that. But I ultimately do believe that people make choices. And you're not destined to be a certain thing. It has to do with education. The education, not just you're getting in your school, but you're getting from your parents and the values that you're getting from your religious leaders, or if you don't have religious leaders, from whoever. But yeah, we are up against, and I'm careful how I use the term, so when I use it, I really mean it. We're up against real evil. All right, some of the things that were done on Simchat Torah, in your wildest, craziest imaginations about how cruel people could be, you would not have thought of that. I was talking to one of my son's friends, came out. He had a 48-hour break from Gaza, and I saw him. He came to my son's house, and I was there, and I was talking to him, and he said, yesterday we found 2 hostage bodies in one of the tunnels, and he said, one of them was warm. What does that mean?
That he died recently?
It was a she, that they killed her right when the army was coming. Like did she know? Did she know the soldiers were coming, and in an ultimate act of cruelty, like kill her right then? So that's that, and that's just that's the least of some of the stories that we're having right now. But I do believe that the people who did that had a chance to be different and chose the wrong path. And I could feel sorry for them, or I could say like, well, I need to protect the people I love from you because you made a choice and I'm going to make a choice and do everything that I can to keep that. Why, do you believe in inherent evil or good?
Not necessarily, no. It's because I mainly just asked because the way you were putting it, it seemed like these people, like that you were talking about, were inherently bad or inherently evil because of their actions.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that like at the same time that yes, they're terrible actions, I feel like most of it is like being taught like from an early age to just hate,
Right. But that's, so, if you're taught something, you can't, and you have the choice to not do it. And there are people who have. I mean, we know that there are people who said, this is not right, and I don't want to live like this.
Yeah, but it's very difficult because like if you're born learning something and like from a very early age, you're just gaslit into believing these people are evil, this people's bad, you need to kill these people.
Okay.
You're kind of like bound to like having that
Are you?
most of the time.
Are you?
Of course, some people are able to see through the gaslighting,
Mm-hmm.
choose something else, but it's not like it's easy.
Right. So where do we, as people who don't like that kind of behavior, so what do we do with that? We can make excuses and say it's not their fault. That was the education they were given. Let's say that's true. But, so
we should help teach them better.
right. So that was initially what's gone on for like the last 30 years, is that the idea was that they only have these negative feelings, to put it a little mildly, towards us because they feel that we've done something wrong to them and we took their land or we did this and we did that. And what we've seen over the last 30 years, because we've made concessions and we've done that, is that's not what it's about. That there's something in their religion, in how they interpret God, that makes them feel that the ultimate they can do to worship God is to kill people. And it's tragic. It is absolutely tragic. And maybe one day there'll be a reformation in the Muslim world. And I'm using Muslim very loosely because there's Shias and there's Sunnis and there's all, but I'm just using it loosely for our purposes. The Christians had a reformation. Christians used to be awful. I mean, really? And I tell this to my Christian tourists, but more Jews have definitely been killed in the name of Jesus and in Muhammad between the Inquisition and the Crusades and even the Holocaust that had Christian underpinnings to it. So, but they somehow figured it out, I would hope, okay? And so maybe the Muslims will also figure it out. But I can't wait them out because while they're still feeling this way and acting evil because of the education they've gotten, they're trying to hurt us. And not just us, a lot of people. So I wish them well. I mean, I'm not saying that sarcastically. I really, really wish them well. I've talked to enough Muslims, especially Muslim women, to realize that it ain't easy over there, especially for their women. All right? There's a lot of things that I wish they would fix, but there's a limit as to what I can do. Like, I'm trying to get the Jewish world to be what it should be. I can't fix the Muslim world, and it's not up to me to fix it. There's certain things that you have to do on your own. So I really hope that it works for them. In the meantime, I will do absolutely whatever I can to make sure that their jihadist aspirations are not fulfilled. And hope for the best, and hope that they get some leadership in there who will make them good people. But right now, they are squarely, for me, on the side of evil. And I totally understand where you're coming from, and it's the way to think. But they have a responsibility also that they have to fulfill. Just like your parents are trying to make you a decent person and give you certain values. And I think their parents have really failed them on a human being level. But it's not something I can control. So I can just protect myself from. But I like how you're thinking. It's important to be like that. It's important to empathize even when you disagree. It's very, very hard.
Yeah, you kind of have to understand that even though they're not necessarily bad people, good, even like people who think they're doing something good can do something bad, right?
There is nothing about what they're doing that's good in my vocabulary in any way, shape.
Like
They think it is.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
They think it is. They think the whole world has to be Islam, and this is the way you go about doing it. You either convert or you die. Okay, I happen to disagree. And one of the interesting things about Judaism is we don't think that we have all the answers. Judaism doesn't run around and say, if you don't believe in Hashem and the Torah in our version, you're not a good person. All right. The only time that we know of in our history that we actually converted people was under the Hashmonaim, when they had a Judean state, the whole Hanukkah people. And their basic thing was, this is a Jewish country, so if you can leave, but if you want to live here, you have to be Jewish. And not all the Edomites and Eritreans agreed with that. So some of it was done, forcibly. But as far as we know, that's the only time we did that, because we're like, just be a good person. Everybody has what to do. We've got our job to do. We were given the Torah. We have a very big job to do. But like, I've had some really interesting conversations when I guide Christians, and there was like a group of pastors that I guided a few years ago. And at the last dinner, one of them was really upset. He said to me, listen, I have to tell you that I really like you. Well, that's nice. That's good. He goes, but I'm really upset because you're not going to go to heaven because you don't believe in Jesus. And he said, and I really like you and I want you to go to heaven. So what are we going to do? And I said, we are not going to do anything. And I'm good. And I appreciate your concern, because it was coming from a really true place. Like you were saying, really in his heart, he really believes that I won't get God's grace unless I believe that Jesus was Messiah. And I really don't believe that. So we agreed to disagree. But I saw his caring for me in that. I didn't see it as a nasty thing. I saw it as a beautiful thing. I just feel differently. And so we parted ways. I respect him. He respects me. I still don't believe in Jesus. And I still think that hopefully I'll get to heaven. But that's who it is. And that's just the balance in life, is to meet people of different opinions with you, respect them, but also be able to respectfully disagree and say, that's not for me. And as the Jewish people, that's kind of what we keep doing. Saying over and over again, that's nice, but it's not for me. It's hard.
Yeah.
Okay, Gustavo. Ask your parents what we were named after.
All right.
You have anything else?
No.
Let someone else come? You want to smell it while you're here?
Sure.
Okay. This is the perk for coming in here. Here you go. It's really powerful. If you want to say.
All right.
I wanted to ask you how you think this war is going to end. Because as somebody watching from kind of the sidelines, I've been really like contemplating whether you think that it's going to end kind of in a mutual agreement between the two, between Israel and Palestine, or if you think that this is kind of the beginning towards something bigger.
Okay. You want to ask me an easier question? Okay. We have to identify who the enemy is here. And the enemy is really Iran. And Iran is the head of the snake. And Iran is not just going against Israel. Iran really has global aspirations, okay? They are the ones who very much are funding, they and all their Qatar and all these other, the Houthis in Yemen. There's a lot of stuff going on in the Middle East that I don't know if you always see. Like, there's basically a piracy war going on in the Red Sea. The Houthis in Yemen are sinking British and American ships almost daily. The Suez Canal is not getting the traffic it had. There's a whole lot of moving parts here. Everyone's focused on what's happening in Gaza. There's a whole lot of other things happening here that are not great. So that ultimately is what the Western world is going to have to deal with, is Iran. Now, what I'm hoping is that the Iranian people, who, from my understanding, are mostly incredible people who've been taken over by a bunch of crazies. But the Persians, because that's what they are, the Iranians, are very much westernized and very much understanding of this is not the way they want to go. But they've been hijacked by a really bad regime. So the best case scenario in Iran that I would see is for there to be some kind of civil war, and they get rid of their guys on their own. That would be the least painful way to go.
Would you think the same thing would happen between Palestine and sorry, I forgot their name. I'm blanking.
Israel?
No. Palestine
and Hamas?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't use the word Palestine because there is no such country. If people want to identify themselves as a certain group, that's fine. Okay. But that doesn't automatically mean that then you get your own country. All right. Which is where they're sitting on. That's what they want to do. Oh, look at a map. Before 1948, it says Palestine. Therefore, we're the indigenous people and you're the colonializers. There's like a lot of manipulation here, and people who don't know their history can fall into that. Okay. But Palestine was Hadrian's attempt to erase the name of Judea, because Judea clearly means Jew, right? Where Judaism and Jews come from. And so there's a lot of that going on. I do not think Israel has to wipe out Hamas. And I'll give you just like a moral reason, because some people are saying there should be a Palestinian state. So forget the violence and what the state is going to stand for. If their Bastille Day, their July 4th, their Day of Independence is October 7th, that says something terrible about who they are, right? That they got their independence because they slaughtered, raped and beheaded people. Like, that's where you're going with your independence, right? So that in itself is problematic. So Israel really has to go after Hamas, not just for Israel, but for the messages that it says to them. Remember, it's not only how we think, it's how they think, how they interpret it. If they feel that in any way, shape, or form, violence got them what they wanted, we are just going to have more violence, all right? Like, you probably never threw a tantrum when you were a kid, right? But if you did, and your parents let you get away with a tantrum, they just set up your next tantrum because you learned that kind of behavior, lying on the floor of the supermarket saying, but I want Oreos or whatever it was, okay, and they gave in, then you were going to do that the next time. Okay, it's all behavioral psychology ultimately. So much is behavioral psychology. All right, so they had to stop it. And they had to say, no, that behavior doesn't get what you want. So when you have such egregious violence like we had, and they didn't start on October 7th. Those of us who live in Judea and Samaria have had previews to this kind of behavior before. Babies being beheaded and women being brutally raped. And there's a journalist that I'm in touch with. I've interviewed him a few times, Jonathan Spire. And I spoke to him after October 7th and I said, did this surprise you? He said, no, because I was in Syria right after the ISIS finished with the Yazidis, this tribe that was pretty much completely wiped out. And he said, this is what I saw there also. Just, it made the headlines a little bit. And America went after ISIS because that kind of evil can't be allowed. Now, are they still around? Yes, the ideology is still around. You're not going to wipe out total ideologies because you can't change how certain people think. I'm sure there are Hamas supporters in America. You're not going to go after America. But you can wipe out their ability to perpetrate what it is they want to do. And that's what Israel has to do. And not just for us, but for all good Arabs, because that kind of behavior hurts everybody. All right. And I'm sure, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that there are Muslims and Arabs, and they're not the same thing. I hope you all know that, right? Who don't like this and who don't want this. And this is giving Islam a really, really bad name. But in order to allow those people the freedom to maybe come up and one day have some power, we have to get rid of the evil ones. And Israel is in a position to do that. So the really big sticking point here, that's the most painful one, of course, is the hostages. Because every single day that goes by, and we don't even know if they're alive, and if they're alive, like, what kind of state could they possibly in? I mean, guys, as we're sitting here, girls are being raped. What do we think is happening there? And not just the girls. I mean, horrible things are happening. So every single day that goes by, it gets worse and worse and worse. I have a 1-year-old granddaughter who has red hair, and she looks like Fear Bibas, the baby, the redheaded baby.
The one that went really.
The one like on all the posters, because the mom was taken with her 2 redheaded children. And sometimes I can't look at her because I'm like, oh my God, this baby and his parents and his family, like, it's really personal. It's really personal. But if Israel stops the war now to get the hostages released, which we probably won't, because now Hamas is saying we don't even know where they are, and I'm sure that many of them aren't alive, and they also don't want them coming out and saying what was done to them, because we already know from the ones who were released the kinds of things that happened to them.
Yeah.
Right. So, but what it means is that terrorists are released for the hostages, which in itself is like a totally immoral balance. Like, all right. And that means that down the line, people will get killed by those terrorists, which is like Sinwar was let out in the Gilad Shalit deal when 1,000 terrorists were let out for Gilad Shalit. All this was born from that. So when you're the leader of a country, and I cannot imagine what it's like to be prime minister of Israel. I mean, really, it's got to be the hardest job in the world. You have to see the whole picture. You know, you can't just see the hostages, as painful as it is, and the parents of the soldiers, as painful as it is. You have to view the whole picture and what's going to happen to the country if you do this and if you do that. And so that's where we're sitting right now. It is so difficult. It is so difficult. One of my friends, she lives on a farm in the Jordan Valley. I eat 2 of her dates every morning with my coffee because for me, like I eat ideologically. So every morning with my coffee, I have 2 beautiful dates that my friend grew in the Jordan Valley. They happen to be amazing dates. So what am I doing? First of all, I'm making the blessing on one of the 7 species. I am putting her energy into me because I know her and I know how much she loves Israel. I'm putting the land into me. That's how I'm starting the day. I know it sounds so woohoo, but it's like really that's what we're dealing with. Okay, so for me, Judaism and Israel is all tied up together because it's that power that we have. So I was there. I ran a women's mission to Judea and Samaria, women meeting women. It was unbelievable. A couple weeks ago, unbelievable, because the women aren't getting really the headlines because the guys are fighting the war, but the women on the home front, oh my God, what they're doing is just outstanding. And she told us that 2 days before, she got a call from her husband, who's in special forces, and he'd been called into Gaza. He said, listen to the news tomorrow. She goes, okay, what? He goes, I can't tell you because I don't know. Just listen to the news tomorrow. She got up at 1:40 in the morning. She doesn't know why. And she said to Hashem, and by the way, you would look at her and say she doesn't look religious. Okay, like jeans, no hair covering, long, beautiful hair. Okay, she got up at 1:40 in the morning and she had a sense. And she said to God, our guys are doing everything they can possibly do now. Now you need to step up. That's quite a blunt conversation to have with Hashem. I do that all the time also. I'm like, okay, come on. Like, we need you now. Her husband called her a few hours later, and the 2 hostages had been rescued. The 2 Argentinian guys that were rescued in apparently a mission that would make James Bond jealous, like what happened there. Most of the details will never get out, but it was insane. And she said her husband called and said, I was one of those guys. And right when you got up at 1:40 in the morning, that's exactly when this was going down. All right. So we're doing it together. And there isn't a soldier who won't say to you that they know that something bigger is out there protecting them. And it's not hermetically sealed and soldiers are dying, right? I mean, if being religious was an insurance policy, we would all sign up. It doesn't work like that, right? But there's a sense that it's something so much bigger. And she said, yeah, she said he was one of the guys. And it was just like an amazing thing. But it's not going to happen every day. And I wish that they could all be rescued, you know, and who knows, maybe as we're sitting here, like they're all being rescued somehow. I don't know. It would be amazing. But we're at a very hard place right now because there's no totally good answer. And there's a lot of pain and a lot of people who are not going to have the people that they love the most with them. And it's really heartbreaking. And later that day, after the hostages were freed, about an hour later, I heard about 2 soldiers being killed. And so my husband called and I'm crying. First, I was crying with joy. And then I was crying with grief. And he said to me, you know, you don't know these people. I said, what do you mean I don't know these people? Of course I know these people. And not only that, they just died to save us. And they don't know me. So what does that mean I don't know these people? We all know each other. There's a we, like I said before, there's a we happening here that is so powerful that it's hard to grasp it. There's a Hebrew word, hazui, Anybody know what that means? I can't tell you what it means because it actually doesn't have a translation. If you look it up now, if anybody's Googling, you're probably not allowed your phones when there's a speaker. It means delusional. But delusional, it gives you the idea that it's not really happening. Like I remember that all of October, I would wake up every morning and go, wow, that was such a bad nightmare. And then I would realize that my entire country was having the same nightmare, and it wasn't a nightmare. It was actually the reality. So that's what hazui is, like a situation that you can't describe. There's no description for it, and that's what's happening in Israel right now. Hazui on the terrible level, like how can it be that, that this soldier was killed? And hazui on the other level, which is how can it be that people who don't even know each other care so much for each other? And in that space, we're trying to make some sense of things. How do I think this will end, you asked me? I think we will be okay, also because we don't have a choice.
Yeah.
And my only question right now is the price that we pay. That's the only question. We will survive this and come out really, really, really strong, but a price will be paid. And that's what scares me. That's what scares me.
Your hope is like, I don't know, it's hard for me, especially like because I don't live in Israel and because I don't, see things right away. And like, it's hard to like kind of envision where this is going to go, especially, because I'm not the type of person to have, the perfect hindsight on this. And I don't think really anybody is, honestly. And like, I don't know, it's like stressful to think like what is going to happen. And I think hope is like the best thing. And
always. But also, I don't feel like the script has already been written. This is a difficult concept for me in Judaism because, like, on the one hand, like Hashem knows what's going to happen. On the other hand, we have the choices to make that send it in a different direction. It's like you don't have prophecy, which nobody does. So fine, we don't know where it's going.
Yeah.
We don't know where it's going because we don't know yet what decisions we're going to be making or the other people are going to be making. This whole thing is so fluid at any given moment. But that means that each one of us has the ability to make a difference. I mentioned to you before about the Lamed Vav Nikim, the 36, right? And I said, I myself know 500 people. So I didn't finish that, right? I said that before, like the righteous people that hold up the world. And I said, it can't be 36 because I know 500 myself. And the answer that I got from the person I was having this discussion is that maybe it's not the same 36 people at all times. Maybe it changes every moment. There's always 36 people, but it's not the same person. And I sat and I said, oh my God, that means that maybe for one split millisecond, I could be one of those people who, because of my act of kindness or whatever, is holding up the world. And I still am sitting with that. Okay, so this isn't like someone else is doing it. Like I'm not special forces. I can't rescue hostages. For that, I have to say someone else. But on the collective level of that, and about making and having hope, and hoping people will make the right decisions, that evil will be eradicated, we're part of that. This is not on someone else. This is on us already now. So we have to take that like super seriously. You want to smell?
So yeah. Oh my gosh.
Right?
Yeah.
I have 2 questions. You can pick which one to answer because they're both like kind of like long answers.
Okay.
The first one would probably be, do you think that like the Jews will like ever be like at full peace with like the rest of the world? Or do you think there's always going to be like a group of people that are going to have a problem with us, or like there's always going to be some kind of challenge that we're going to have to overcome? And then the second question, like you said, like every bad person, like they always have like something good in them. And how do you like justify that? Like, especially with like the leaders of Iran, like they, like in my perspective, like I feel like they just want good for themselves, especially because like they don't care about their people and like they hate the Jews. So like, how do you like see that? And
So I'll try and answer both. Okay. One is that, yeah, I agree with you. They just want good for themselves. One of the tremendous advantages that our enemies have is they don't care about their own people. We have a huge Achilles heel in that we care about our people. We don't have human shields where actually our soldiers are protecting our babies. With them, their babies are standing in front of the terrorists. It gives them a huge advantage. It really does, like beyond anything you can imagine. So the leaders of Iran and the leaders of Hamas, and a lot of them are using that. And we're being told that, like, and we don't want to kill innocent people, but on the other hand, we have to get to the bad guys who are hiding there. It's so challenging. It's like beyond. It's really beyond imagining. But as to your first question, it depends how you define peace. You know, like when you grow up in America, I grew up in California. Like I was eating granola before anybody knew what granola was. All right. It was like, you know, we were all so cool in California. Peace was like, yeah, kumbaya, like everybody's hanging and it's all good and whatever. Peace can also mean the absence of war. It doesn't necessarily mean, wow, we love you. It means we're not fighting with each other. That's also good. And I think that we can get to that, but only by being so strong that they won't mess with us. When we're weak, they zoom in, and it doesn't have to be everybody. Like I said, the Christians have chilled. Yeah, all right, fine. So that's not our problem right now. But then there's other people. There will always be people, I believe, who hate us because, like I said before, we hold up a mirror to what they could be, and they're not. Mm-hmm. And they don't like that. And because also we tend to be successful because we work really, really hard. Yeah. I mean, most people do not hand anything to us. We have been refugees in so many places and started all over, and nobody started an organization for us or anything like that. It was other Jews, if anything, that helped Jews, but nobody on the outside ever did it. But we pick ourselves up and we study hard because really, you guys know this, and I don't know where your families sit, like economically or anything, but the only thing that you will ever really own that nobody can take away from you is what's in your head. That's the only thing that's yours that you can take with you even if you're running. And that's something that we have honed over the years because a lot of times we had to take off and we didn't have land and we didn't have this. So, and also the Torah was kind of smart about that because when it said teach your children Torah, it was saying, literally reading between the lines, teach your kids how to read, how to be able to write and read and communicate. And that gave us a tremendous jump on the world. If you go in terms of archaeology, the Judeans were literate when nobody else was literate. Like way back when nobody knew how to read. Hieroglyphics in Egypt, for example, the common people didn't know how to read that. And we were reading and we were writing. We know because we have found like shopping lists, like not necessarily biblical books. Okay, scribes were literate, but like from a fortress in Arad, we're out of flour and oil. Can you please send them? Pretty much along those lines, which means that like a simple soldier knew how to read and write. Okay. So that's pretty amazing. So we annoy people because we just won't go away. And we also won't leave our religion, even when like they're basically killing us for keeping it. And, there's always a core that says, no, I'm actually would rather be dead than leave this and than do other things that betrays what a human being is. And it's fascinating. So there will always be people that don't like us, but I'm not going to run my life by the people that don't like me. I'm going to surround myself by the people who do, who appreciate us, who respect us. And we have a lot to do, and we have to like focus on that and move the other stuff aside. But we need the safe space to be able to do it. And that's what Israel is, the safe space to be able to do it. Right now, we hit a little bump in the road, but we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay as long as we stay united and as long as we together understand like, that we need each other. That's going to be the huge thing. Did I answer your questions?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Just wanted to ask Eve one last question. First of all, I wanted to thank you so much for coming here today. It was a real pleasure. Can we have a round of applause for Eve?
And I want to make sure to thank the Greater Folic family. Shanna's in the back over there because they're the ones who brought me into Miami and facilitated this whole thing.
Of course. We are a community and we couldn't do it without our parents as well.
Exactly. Because they understand the importance of education.
Yes, absolutely. I wanted to ask you one last question. These kids our students are about to go to Israel in a few months. And not only them, but they're going to be joined by 30 more students because there's the incoming 9th grade as well. We're looking at about 75 of us that are going to be going, and they're going to be going back and forth again and again. Can you perhaps maybe leave them off with one message in their 4 months of spending in Israel over the course of their 4 years of coming time and again? What advice would you give them about what they can do during their time there that would perhaps make that experience meaningful to them?
Go out of your comfort zone, physically and spiritually. Meaning, and I see you already do, go to some of the places people are like, oh, we can't go there. But that's where the connection happens to history, to our people. So do that, and that's already not up to them. That's up to you guys. And go out of your comfort zone in terms of the Israelis that you meet. Meet Israelis. Okay, one of my pet peeves, I have a list, Eve's peeves, is, and I bring this up with tour guides all the time, take people to meet Israelis. Like you take them to all these sites, and the only Israeli you ever meet is the waitress at the restaurant. Meet Israelis, because Israelis all have an opinion, every single one. And this kibbutz galuyot that we talked about, this ingathering of the exiles, is fascinating because the person who came from the Ukraine does not have the same opinion as the person who came from Morocco or the person who came from Teaneck. And we're making this work, and the food is phenomenal. Okay, part of that is phenomenal because of that. But try and do that. Meet people, especially people who you don't necessarily agree with, and try and find their motive for what got them to believe in what they believe in. All right? Because we're all on a journey. Every single one of us is on a journey. And at different parts of our life, we divert. I'm certainly not the same person that I was 40 years ago. And if I was, that would be pathetic. Because that means that all the things that I've gone through, especially raising children who have, with all due respect to the incredible teachers that I've had, the greatest teachers that I have had have been my children.
So we're talking about places, we're talking about people. What did you mean by spiritually? Maybe say a word on that.
Try and pray in different places or not. Go to Shiloh and don't have an organized prayer. Go to where Chana prayed for a child, okay, which the rabbis say is the paradigm of prayer. No minyan, nothing. She just pours out her heart to God. And go there and try and connect on your own without necessarily the formal thing. Listen, pay attention to the little sounds, to the energies that are there, because ultimately you need to have a relationship with Hashem, like some kind of relationship, even if it's an angry one, which is also fine, because that's still a relationship. And to find the places in the land where I believe that places call to certain people. If you go to the area like Mount Gerizim and Mount Eval, which is right near Shechem, that is a tough area. Tough people have always lived there, good and bad. And that is where the covenant at Sinai is reset when Joshua comes in, and they're basically redoing Sinai, but now in the land. All right? Stand there, feel the place, look at the terrain, look at the land, and you'll understand why certain things happened there. Go with your Tanakh open and look at it topographically. Oh, this is why this happened here. So I'll give you I usually don't do it until I take people up there. There's an acoustic sound chamber around Shechem. You stand on top of Mount Gerizim and you can hear horns honking in Shechem. And then you open the Tanakh and they're reading the blessings and the curses. And it emphasizes 3 times, I think, everybody heard it, everybody heard it, everybody heard it. They didn't have microphones in those days. What does it mean everybody heard it? And the Tanakh doesn't tell you, but there's this thing that means the sound reverberates all through the mountains. And that's how everyone heard it. So look at the Tanakh in its place where this happened, and the book will never be the same for you, ever. It will be like in living color. You won't be able to read it the same again. So if you're raised in the land, do that as much as you can.
That's the goal, the entire trip and the entire experience.
I'm so
Thank you very, very much for coming. Thank you very much for being with us and for sharing your words of wisdom with us. Thank you.
Thank you guys, really.